Hello. Welcome, everyone. Another live Friday evening. I wanted to answer some questions that I got. On the community page, I asked for some questions. I wanted to do some videos answering these questions. I thought I would do one video answering a handful of them to get through as many as possible. There were a lot of great questions. So I'm excited to dive into these questions and answer them for you. How is everyone today? Where are you guys all stepping in from? From Texas. Hopefully the Wi-Fi is good. It's been spotty today. How are you guys feeling? Bend, Oregon, Hershey, Pennsylvania, New Zealand, Brooklyn, North Carolina, Portland, United States, a lot of Queensland, Australia, Nashville, Alberta. So good to be with you guys. Portugal. Hello, hello, hello. So settle in. I've got a lot of beautiful beings with me right now that are going to answer the questions for us. But as you're joining live, I invite you to, if you have the ability to kind of tap into the energies that are around you, I invite you to tap in and feel the beings that are with you right now and invite them in. So I want to answer some questions that I got. I got lots and lots of questions on the community page, and I'm going to answer a handful of them now. So let me pull them up. I started with a couple ones that I could just answer pretty quickly, and then I'll go into more of the complex ones. Hello, 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 everyone. Okay. This question was from, I think, Nosley. Here's the question. Lori, will humanity have another extreme event after this virus goes? Is it only a fragment of upcoming tsunamis? So yeah, this is the beginning, right? So not to throw any sort of like expectation or fear into what's coming, because we never know. So even in this answer of yes, there's other purgings and clearings that are going to happen. Even in saying that, anything can happen, right? There are multiple timelines that the collective can shift into. But in this now moment that we're in, based on the frequency that the collective is holding and the trajectory of where the collective is shifting into consciously, yes, there are going to be more purges like we experienced and that we're currently experiencing. And they will unravel more shadow, unravel more underbelly, right? Unravel more of the lower frequencies that we like to call dark. There aren't, in which case we've been able to shift the collective very quickly, right? And move into a higher frequency collectively. Not sure if that's going to happen, but it's possible. Anything's possible. You always want to be careful when you state sort of future timelines or future expectations with anything. Because if you remember, we're in the quantum field, anything's possible at any now moment. So anything can shift. The next question. Helping others. This is by John. What's the best way to explain what's going on to people not quite awakened or aware yet of what's really happening? I'm having a hard time deciding if giving them information is helping them or not, if they don't seem interested. Is it best to just plant a seed of information or say nothing at all? I want to do it in the most loving way possible to help the best way? I think this is a really common question for a lot of light workers, way showers, starseeds, because we want to awaken those that are asleep, right? And for their highest good, right? So we want to share, we want to provide the information, but it's a very fine line because we all have free will. And so our role as the way shower is to really navigate, are they asking, or am I moving in, am I pushing energy into them? Am I pushing information and my agenda and my beliefs onto them with the intention of hoping they wake up? Right? So that's my intention. That's my agenda, right? Or am I allowing them to ask? And the way they will ask is by you being and showing the way. For instance, let's say that you're going to the grocery store with well, you wouldn't be going to the grocery store with your friend right now. Let's say you're on the phone with your friend and you guys are talking back and forth and the friend isn't awake yet, right? They're still playing in those really intense fear paradigms. And you're talking about how you went to the grocery store and you don't wear a mask, let's just say, right? Because you are playing in a field where you hold the awareness that all is well, right? And that you're fine. And when you say this to the friend gets irritated or angry or upset, right? That's a signal of like, I'm not going to throw my information over to them, right? I'm not going to argue this point. Or let's say you're talking about some other paradigm out there about the government or any other underbelly that's coming up, right? Vaccines, whatever it may be. If you're having the conversation and there's an opening where the person is like, what do you mean? Share more. What are you talking about, right? There's an opening. So you're being you. And you're honoring your truths and your ways by speaking it, but you're not throwing it onto the other individual, right? It's a fine line. You're you show up, you be you. Else, it's not necessarily going to be accepted with open arms, right? Does that make sense? So we're not here to throw and to be the poster child. We're here to be the way shower, which is that I'm going to show the way by being it, right? And sometimes that alone can be challenging. So we want to educate, right? We want to share, we want to provide, but we want to do it with the human's free will. And that can take a lot of patience and a lot of frustration, right? I mean, that is what our family of light and our guides have been doing with us for a very long time. They patiently wait until we are ready to awaken, right? They don't throw all this information on us because we're not ready to hear it. So a lot of times if the human isn't ready to hear it, they're going to argue it or fight against it or whatever, right? And then 6 months later, they're like, oh my God, I'm finally ready to hear what you were saying. I get it now. So again, you're being you, you're honoring your truth, right? You're speaking your truth in your sovereign field, but you're not doing it for the sole purpose of awakening that individual, showing them that you're right and they're wrong, because that's not true, right? So from a dualistic sort of belief or frequency, you're going to see it that way. But when you look at ascension through the eyes of the ascension professor, right? So you're putting on your goggles and you're looking at everything as energy and consciousness. By us staying focused on holding the higher frequencies, continuing to hold the higher frequencies, looking through the mask and the illusion of the third dimension, the fourth dimension, even the fifth dimension, right? Understanding there's an ascension process happening, right? And there's an ascension going on. Naturally, that's going to increase the frequency on the earth plane. And naturally, the collective consciousness is slowly going to increase. Right? That's how ascension works. And so those that are choosing not to awaken will stay unawakened for this entire life. And they may pass unawakened. That's their choice. So this massive unraveling of the ascension process that we're a process. The human likes to think that it's going to happen overnight, or it's going to be fast and quick, and in 5 years from now, boom. It's going to take a while. So not all humans are going to shift into the fourth dimensional field or the fifth energy and consciousness, and every human has a choice to either participate and go with it or not participate. So there's no right or wrong. And when you start to see it through that lens, your role as the way shower is to hold the higher frequencies and to pull the collective into the higher frequencies without holding on to any expectation, right? It's going to happen. More and more humans are going to wake up naturally. We're already watching that happen, right? Right now, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, nobody talked about the word ascension. And now it's just every day, everyone talks about it. Everyone understands. People are awakening. Not everyone. A large amount of people. Not the majority, right? So as we continue to just do our role and our job and not worry about whether others are going to come along, they will naturally choose to come along or choose to not come along, right? That's their choice. Hard to hold that though, because we want everyone to come along with us. Eventually, at some other now moment, the fifth dimensional field will be easily accessible. Right now, it's not that accessible. It's just opening. So imagine like there's you're watching a movie, right? And the screen is covered by a drape of some sort. And the drape has just begun to open for us. You imagine the screen as the fifth dimension, meaning the fifth dimensional field where you are holding fifth dimensional density. You're in a 5D density. Okay? Right now you're in third dimensional. Your density is 3D or 4D. We are just now being able to open that drape up a little bit to see the 5D field. But we are not even close to actually opening that entire drape up to actually see physically the fifth dimensional field, which is why there's a confusion over, is it an actual new Earth physical plane? Is it a separate Earth, right? Like what does it look like? I'm so confused. I can't see it. It exists on the same Earth plane. It's holding a different frequency and density. And unless you're holding that frequency and density, you're not going to be able to stand in it and experience it. And it takes a large number of human light workers, way showers, to pull the density on the Earth plane right now towards that 5D field in order to open that drape more and more and more so that we can start to see that density, see that field, hold that density in our body more and more and more until boom, all of a sudden, quite naturally, out of the blue, after a certain amount of human time, we are standing in a completely different reality. It's going to happen slowly. It's going to happen like all of a sudden you're going to be like, wait, somehow I'm like, it's not going to be overnight. It's not going to be a light switch that turns on and boom, we're in a 5D world. It's a slow progression. And we have to pull the collective consciousness into the fifth dimensional frequency so that we can open that drape up. The drape will open the more humans are holding the 5D frequency. Do you understand? Almost feel what it's going to be like, right? I'm tapping into it. Is it real? Are we going to be standing on it? What's it going to look like? Which is why the collective consciousness as on the whole has to begin to be pulled into the higher frequencies. Because we as a collective will shift into more of a 5D consciousness, tipping the scale, allowing us to rip open that curtain. It's a scale, so to speak, right? Frequencies and densities on the earth is like a scale. And the third, fourth, and fifth all exist in this now. And the more we hold the higher consciousnesses, the 5D consciousnesses in our body, anchoring it in more and more, holding these higher frequencies, we slowly start to tip the scale on a consciousness wise, right? Energy wise. And as we start to do this, we start to open it up and see. There's another reality. Holy shit. Right now, we're having to play in this quantum space where we have to remember, we have to tap into it energetically. This is why clearing the collective is so important, because we have to shift the scale. Does that make sense? Various videos floating around Instagram lately of lights in the sky at night. Multiple orbs of light moving at fast speeds and impossible angles, making various shapes and formations. Naturally, the mainstream media has not covered this. What are these star beings trying to tell us? Why? So those ships or crafts have always been there. What's happening is twofold. One, the earth plane that we're standing on in this 3D field and the 4D field is starting to increase its frequency. The collective as a whole is starting to increase its frequency. Energies, consciousnesses, beings that are in a little bit of a higher frequency that we weren't able to see when we were enshrouded in more density, covered in more density. That's the first thing that's appearing, right? So all of a sudden we're seeing more now. We're seeing orbs, we're seeing lights, we're seeing flashes. It's not that they're all of a sudden appearing. They've always been there. Always. What they're also doing now, because we are holding higher frequencies and it is safe. It is more safe now than any other time to begin to show themselves. They are now starting to show themselves more by slowing their frequency down. And when they slow their frequency down, they enter into the third dimensional field. They go through the portal and they're in the third dimensional field. That's why you see them disappear just like this sometimes. Or they're here and then all of a sudden they're there and then they're somewhere else. They're portal hopping. They're shifting their frequency to disappear and then to reappear, right? We all know how to do that. We're just in such a low density that we forgot. So these beings are starting to show themselves to remind us, to assist us in waking up. Holy shit, there really are beings out there. Oh my God, I can really see them. We're able to hold it more now. Humans are able to hold it more now. So they're going to start to show themselves. And the collective, the earth plane, and the human form is holding higher frequencies. So they can begin to see higher frequencies. But they have always been there. So they're not all of a sudden coming in now. They've always been there. They've always been supporting us. They've always been moving in and out of the fifth dimensional grid that is around the earth. They're always around. That's why you're going to see more showing up in pictures. You're going to see more showing up in videos. Again, it's all a very natural process, right? Speaking of natural, now we're ready. And they'll start showing themselves in videos too. Okay, another random question. That's a fun question. From Winnie. Hi, beautiful soul. Can you please explain what a hybrid human is? And also what it would mean if someone said they dropped into this experience directly from source, no other dimensional aspects. Thank you. Okay, great question. A hybrid human is a half human, half other race or And there's no human. So how do I explain this? Okay. They are human in the sense. Okay, here we go. Okay. So years ago, they entered into the earth plane. And at that time, they began to experiment with the human body. And they infiltrated the human form without free will, without our free will. From a higher perspective, we always gave free will with the human. And they would take DNA from the human body, the third dimensional human body, which holds higher dimensional light codes. Okay. But they took the DNA. This is a little complicated. There's two sets of DNA. There's the DNA that creates the form, and there's the DNA that the higher consciousness brings in. Okay, are you with me? So the DNA that creates the human form, this is what these races were interested in. And so they would take that DNA or light codes, the light codes that created the human form. They took those light codes energetically out of the human. They also took the egg out of the human, okay? And then they took their species, their race, which is fourth dimensional. It's a fourth dimensional being. It's a fourth dimensional form. And they merged, created the human body, okay? Because the human is not a race. It's not a species. The human is an experience. Are you getting this so far? So the human is a body. We're higher consciousness experiencing the human experience. Got it? We're not a race. The fourth dimensional races are races because they are actually fourth dimensional beings. They exist as and experiencing themselves as 4D. They're not a higher consciousness in the fourth dimensional body. Got it? Does that make sense? Okay, so they took the light codes that created the human form because they were intrigued by the human form. And they took light codes that created their 4D form and they merged them. And they either implanted that merged light codes back into the human for a very short period of time and let it gestate, so to speak, or they implanted it into the fourth dimensional race or being. And that, in a very simple way, is how hybrid beings are created. And there are hundreds and hundreds of them. There's also fifth dimensional races and beings that created hybrids. The human form DNA, I want to get that clear. The human doesn't have DNA. The human form has DNA, and the higher consciousness that dropped in has the DNA. And DNA isn't even DNA, it's light codes. There really isn't DNA. DNA is the word that the human uses for light codes. It's another word for light codes. So that's how hybrids were created. And they enjoyed this, and they made many different types of hybrid beings. And some of them are holding higher frequencies, some of them are holding lower frequencies, some of them look very human, some of them look very ET-ish. Some of them are engaging and interacting with you, all of you guys right now. They're very much going to be a part of this transition. Some of them, this transition. Is there a lot of buffering, you guys? That's a bummer. I don't know why there's buffering. So anyway, that's how the hybrid is designed and created. And there's a lot of buffering. I wonder why. Huh. It's fine now. Yeah, well, I'm not talking. Okay, I'm just gonna keep going. So there you go. Nutshell. There's also humanoids. Humanoids are very different than hybrids. Humanoids were created by the lizards, by the reptilians. Completely different race, right? The reptilian hybrids the Galactic Federation of Light called them humanoids because they were much more human. But anyway, side note, they were also created. So when people say that they are from source consciousness and not from a system of light, I am from source. I dropped into this physical body from source. So what does that mean? It means that when the call went out for more light workers, at whatever now moment that was, I was in the vibrational field of source. I know that I experienced myself in many other consciousnesses, right? Throughout the infinite time and space, infinite universes of universes, right? Infinite dimensions of dimensions, right? We can't think of anything through the time-space continuum, even though it's almost impossible not to. And so I chose to drop into human form from source. But I know, and I've experienced myself in many other consciousnesses, right? So there's many light workers and way showers that didn't experience themselves most recently as a Pleiadian experiment. Is that we always assume like, oh, where I came from is who I am. No, it's only who you are in that now moment based on the choice you made, right? You have also probably been an angelic being, a 78th dimensional being, well, you've obviously been source. We all are source, right? You may have been a Pleiadian. You may have been a Octurian. I mean, there's so many things and ways to experience yourself as consciousness. And so to have this tunnel vision, that we have only experienced ourselves as one sort of experience, I think a lot of us know that's not true. But anyway, if someone says they've dropped in from source, it's not a hierarchy. It's just that they chose to drop in when they were experiencing themselves in that source frequency. Okay? Is it still buffering? Sucks, man. I don't know why it's buffering. What's the option? It's okay, go on. Okay. Sorry, you guys. 1 second. Next question is, so good at explaining anything. My perception, there is only one Earth, but so many others say there are two. Why is this? Well, first of all, we haven't done it before. So we don't know, right? We only know what we are provided for and by from our channelings, right? So every teacher that talks on it is doing their best to describe what they haven't experienced yet in this now moment, even though many of us understand exactly what's happening, right? Not many of us, all of us that are the way showers, we know exactly what's occurring. So we understand in the third dimension where there is linearity, where there is time. Understanding how we are moving from 3D to 5D physically is perhaps the most challenging construct to deconstruct. There are not two separate physical Earths, just lifting, because it's exactly the same. So we shift in one form. That's what was so miraculous and is so miraculous about this experiment, is that the higher consciousness that we are stays in the same form, and we shift frequencies in order to anchor us into the next dimensional field and then the next dimensional field. And as soon as you are anchored in there, which means that your form is holding that density, then you are experiencing only that dimensional field. Most of us are not close to holding 5D density in the body yet. A 5D physical form is a combination of crystal and matter. We are all matter, and we're starting to hold more light, and we're starting to crystallize. We got a long ways to go. Long is relative. So throw the word long out the door, but I'm just going to say it's not going to happen overnight. Being a crystallized form means that you can see the form. There's arms, there's fingers, there's legs, there's a head, there's a body. You see it standing there. And yet it is light. So it's like translucent almost. Okay? But it's still got some matter to it because it's holding itself together through matter. But it's crystalline. And so we have to get there. As a 5D density, holding herself in a 5th dimensional field is more crystalline. Everything dimension. The 3rd dimensional spectrum doesn't exist in the 5th dimensional spectrum. Now, as we are merging, as we are taking this ride into that 5th dimensional field, anchoring into the density of 5D, we start to experience it and tap into it at the same time that we are seeing and watching the 3rd dimensional field play out. And because the 3rd dimension is very dense and we are still holding the now, overlapping each other almost. And when you start to, it's like that drape with the movie screen, right? When we start holding more of that 5D consciousness, the more of us that are holding it on the earth plane, imagine the bodies as lightsabers, right? And the lighter they get, the more that shade starts to open to allow us to see that 5D earth plane and to play in it. In the meantime, while we are trying to open that curtain by shifting the collective, we're going to start to see how the 3rd dimensional plane is very far off from where we're going. How do we know that? Because the curtain has started to open. We know that in a 5D field, the way that we work and exchange services is going to be very different. We know the way that we treat humanity and all beings, all animals, all beings are different. How do we know? Because we're starting to tap into, we can see through that little curtain and we're like, holy shit. And so what happens? We look out here and we say, this is nothing like it. I'm not playing in that anymore. I'm going to start to choose to play or be or experience myself as if I am already standing in the 5th dimensional earth plane, even though we're not necessarily standing in it yet because our body hasn't crystallized into that 5D density. So we aren't seeing it. It's a collective wave. We have to we have to shift collectively in order to open that. That's what's so miraculous about us way showers, is that we're going first and we know where we're going, and yet we have to pull a large collective consciousness with us in order to step in and open it up and be in it. And once we are, it's a very strange way of understanding reality, but what it becomes is 3 separate earth experiences. This is very, very challenging for the human to comprehend, because how does a 3D human stand on a 3D earth and a 5D human stand on a 5D earth and it's the same earth plane? How are their light beings, how are their ships anchored into the 5D, which means that the density of our body is 5th dimensional. We're crystalline. We will not see the 3rd dimension. We can tap into it. We can look down and play in it, or look up and play in it, look sideways and play in it. Just like those light beams in the ships, they can look down. They can bring themselves into the 3D field. They choose not to, unless they choose to. And how do they choose to do that? They slow their frequency down. They slow their density down, or they move into a lower density, and boom, we can see them. That's how the quantum space works. You can actually have 3 separate earth planes in the same now moment vibrating differently. And what's occurring with our human form is that we are consciously taking our human form with us. We don't need to leave an aspect of our human form in the 3D. We're taking our human form with our shift, right? The form is actually taking us into that field, into that density. The form is doing it, the physical form. And the way this works is the more of the collective that is holding that 5D density, the more that 5D density becomes a reality. Does that make sense? A little wave compared to a huge tsunami, it's going to make a much bigger splash. We need more humans to be holding that density, the 5D, to assist in opening that curtain. This is why this process is not overnight. And a lot of light workers get upset about that, and they get frustrated. 15 to 20,000 years. So we're shifting much faster than we ever have, right? And we're experiencing 5D consciousness like we never have before. And nobody can really dictate what's going to unravel in the next now. But it's happening much more quickly than the higher dimensional beings were expecting. The Pleiadians today, in the journey that I did, they said that where we are right now collectively as an energetic consciousness is much higher in terms of frequency than where they imagined us to be. So we've done a lot of work, quote unquote work. And they said that we are shifting so much faster, exponentially faster than we ever have. They were addressing the questions that the humans had of, we're not doing this fast enough. We're not doing our work correctly. You know, I'm not doing my light work. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. And they said, yes, you are. Yeah, you're doing it. Just by being in your form and bringing awareness to what's going inside of us. It's not, we're not going anywhere. It's right here, right now. Does that make sense? It's going to continue to boggle our minds, right? Like this mathematical equation where you're like, what? But eventually it's going to start to make sense. And eventually you're going to say, oh yeah, I got it. And even then you're going to be like, but what the hell do I got? I still have quantum equation. But more and more of us will be talking about it and reminding us of how it works. And you know, every teaching is a beautiful teaching. So there is no wrong teaching. So if somebody's teaching something completely different than this, if it resonates with that human, then it's working and it's teaching them. You know, the other thing, it's the same thing with like, you know, wanting all of the humans to shift with us, wanting people. When you start to really understand that from a much larger perspective, we're all on the ride. We're all on this ride together. And the wave is going, right? We're in the ocean. We're on the wave. There's going to be sharks and fish and seaweed and jellyfish. There's going to be all these things in the ocean. You can't deny it, you can't make it right or wrong. It just is. More seaweed's going to follow that wave, right? The wave's going to get bigger and bigger because it's going to start collecting more humans, more seaweed, right? It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that drape covering that 5D earth that exists right now, we will sweep wide into. Make sense? Does that make sense, you guys? Okay, so here's a more human question, or a more like right now question. From Gitle. Hi, Lori. I'm working in a hospital, and in this time of Corona, it totally gets inside of me. I get angry, frustrated, and most of all, feel like running away. I feel the frustration from everybody, and I feel that the health system isn't looking after people working there. I'm feeling trapped. Any good advice to get through it? So, what we just discussed is from a much higher perspective. The wave, the tsunami, opening into 5D, moving from 3D to 5D, right? Holding those higher frequencies, turning into a crystalline body. That's happening right now. And so is that question, right? So is the question that the human is standing in a hospital, inundated with fear and anxiety and stress and worry. And she's a light worker, right? She's a wave shower. This is how you hold everything. We have to acknowledge that we are still going to see and stand in this third dimensional field as we are moving with the wave into the fifth dimensional field. We're going to do it very humanly, meaning in the human body, and we're going to walk through it almost like we're walking through a museum, and we're going to watch the human experience. So we are watching right now the human collective shift. And so if you are in an environment where you have to be surrounded by the lower frequency consciousnesses that are clearing off the earth plane, the coronavirus, the masks, the fear, the vaccines, the whatever, you have to honor your human experience. So you want to give yourself a hug. You want to have compassion for yourself. You've got to be able to let yourself feel it all. And so you're not beating yourself up. It's huge. But you also want to hold the bigger perspective. This is so imperative. I see something behind me. Do you guys see the thing behind the, right over here? We have to hold the higher perspective as often as we can. The higher perspective is, oh yeah, there's a wave of consciousness shifting. Oh yeah, I am moving into higher frequencies, and what's occurring right now through all this fear that's unraveling is the lower frequencies dissolving so that that large wave can continue to move. The way ascension works is that the lower frequencies start to clear out of the collective so that the larger collective can start to move into the higher frequencies. And so if you're standing in those lower frequencies, the shadow, right? The underbelly, I like to call it, give yourself a break. It's intense out there if you're in the hospitals, if you're in the grocery stores, you know, if you're doing the drives, the delivery services. It is an intense energy out there. That's the collective density that's shifting. What you're feeling is consciousness in a lower frequency that's literally clearing off the earth plane. So your role as the way shower is to stand in it and to do your best, which is very hard, but you practice doing your best to remember the bigger picture while you stay human. So a lot of people ask this question: how do I love it and yet not participate in it, right? How are you in the world but not of the world? It's basically the question. You see it from a higher perspective and you honor your human experience. It's called being multidimensional. You have to allow yourself to be multidimensional, which is, I know there's a much larger perspective here, a much larger truth, a much larger reality. And the reason it's not being shown to me is because most of the collective isn't holding it yet. My role as the way shower is to hold this knowingness in the midst of anything and everything unraveling in front of me. And that which is unraveling in front of me, the chaos, the fear, the anxiety, that's the lower frequencies that are literally physically shifting and dissolving out of the collective so the wave can get bigger. You recognize it. You allow your occurring on the earth plane as you're standing in it, in the hospitals or wherever you are. You're seeing it for what it is. You're seeing you, right? And then when you get home, you take care of yourself. You give yourself a light bath. You breathe quietly for 5 minutes. You stand in the shower and you just imagine light flooding over your entire body. When you're standing in the hospital or in the grocery store, you visualize yourself emanating out high frequency light. And if you can possibly imagine it being that love frequency and vibration, then you do that. It is not easy to hold the higher perspective in the midst of this tsunami of chaos and fear and anxiety, right? Because what we want to do is we want to jump in and we want to, argue it or fight against it or stomp our feet and say, no, 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 this can't happen. You want to observe it and see it. You want to feel it. And then you step back and say, I remember what this is all about. I don't have to play in it. I can see it, honor it, love it. And I can recognize it for what it is, which is a lower frequency consciousness dissolving so that wave can get bigger. Not easy. Practice, practice, practice. Does this make sense? You see the energies? Those are beings behind me right now, ps.com. No, that's not Lori's head. That's not Lori's head. There was a being that was standing right here that was showing himself. He's gone now. Maybe he'll come back. He's coming back. You guys, they told me they were going to start to show themselves in my films, in my videos. You can almost freaking see him right here. Yeah, it looks like a shadow, but it's almost moving. And it'll start to come in and out of the field. In the Galactic Federation of Light, I work with 12 beings in a council in the Galactic Federation of Light. There's many, many councils. But I work with them. They're probably here. Anyways, okay, so let's go to the next question. Does that make sense? Answering that question? Okay, next question. I'm gonna hurry up. So I'm gonna get done soon. I'm quite interested. This is by Kate in the. Oh wait, we already answered that. Sorry, one more. Let's go. I've answered a lot of these in the questions. When are we going to see our bodies shift from carbon-based to crystalline? I think I answered that. What will the body look like? I don't know time frame of when that's going to be. So I don't know. Hopefully sooner than later, but who knows? Okay, the last question. And then I'll answer some questions here. Carolinda, hi. When I wake up in the morning, sometimes I feel the energy is high. It's going to be a beautiful day. And it does. And other days I feel the energy is dense and it's going to be a dense day. And it does. My question is, am I creating my day from my own energy, thoughts, and emotions, or has it to do with the collective energy of that day, or maybe both? Am I creating my day from my own energy, thoughts, and emotions, or does it have to deal with the collective energy of that day? Maybe it's both. Great question. So it's both. As we hold higher frequencies in our body and as we start to become more energetic, we start to recognize every now, right? Every day we're like, oh my God, the energy feels blah, 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 right? So it shifts all day long. So if you're really paying attention to the frequency of your body and the collective doesn't shift as quickly as you. So throughout your day, you may feel different frequencies and different energies. Collective energy stays the same throughout the day, right? You're either tapping into a really high frequency, right? The earth is holding a really high frequency. The Schumann resonance is skyrocketing, or it's a lower frequency right now, right? And when it's a lower frequency, it's not that the earth is vibrating in a lower frequency. It's that the purging is more intense that day. It'd be the same thing as if you were having a day where you were going deep into your shadow and you were feeling the lower frequencies. This is a really important piece to point out. Just because the earth plane is holding lower frequencies or that you're holding lower frequencies, what it means is that you are clearing those lower frequencies, and therefore your reality looks like those lower frequencies. You are believing to be in that lower frequency because you are clearing it by seeing it, feeling it, and allowing it to move through you. You, as the higher consciousness, and your physical body is not shifting down into those lower frequencies. The body is always continuing to hold higher frequencies. Always. That's how ascension works. Ascension doesn't move down, it ascends. So regardless of what is happening in your now and what energies, consciousnesses, and frequencies you're experiencing, your body is continuing to hold the higher frequencies. Now, why do you feel like you're in a lower frequency? Because you are feeling the internal consciousnesses that are clearing, or you're feeling the external consciousnesses that the collective is clearing. Remember the way this works. You have an external experience. It is consciousness. It has to move through your channel in order to be understood and digested, filtered. If you just allow that experience to move through you, it's a lower frequency, let's say a fear-based paradigm, or you see something on TV that's fear-based. It moves in as fear. You see it, experience it, feel it as fear, and it floats right through you like a slip and slide. If you hold on to it and project yourself into it, like I am this emotion, I am this fear, I am this now, holy shit, what am I going to do? I'm feeling this means I am it, blah, blah, blah. You're going to hold on to it. And then what's that going to do? It's going to make you feel like you're that consciousness. It's going to make you feel like you're in a lower frequency. Meanwhile, your body's completely fine. It's holding the higher frequencies. It needs you to release it. Let go, please. Let that consciousness go so it can move through you like a slip and slide. The higher the frequencies you hold in your body, the more of a slip and slide your channel is, meaning consciousness just shoots right through. So when you wake up in the morning and you're feeling those high frequencies, you're not making that up. You're feeling the high frequencies. But then what happens? Who knows? Whatever happens in your day, you externally digest some lower consciousnesses, that has to move through you. You have a conversation and create some sort of consciousness that moves through you, right? Perhaps you stay in like a hermit cave and you're just staying in that high frequency because you don't have to deal with anyone, right? So you're not making it up and you're not creating it based on a belief system. You're feeling it. The important piece is to remember that you're not a lower frequency just because you're feeling lower frequencies. Does this make sense? So, and that's with anything. What we do, because we're not aware yet of how this works, is that we say to ourselves, holy shit, I'm in a lower vibe. I'm a low vibe right now. I'm in a lower frequency. Oh my God, I'm not ascending. Holy shit. 3 days ago, I was in this high vibe. Now I'm in this low vibe. What am I going to do to get back up into this high vibe? What did I do wrong, right? How many times have we done that? A lot. We didn't move down into a lower frequency. We experienced a lower frequency. Your body's fine. That's why you can shift right back up into that higher frequency the next day and you think you're losing your mind. Right? That's why it's not necessary for you to shift your frequencies. If you try to control shifting your frequencies and controlling it, you're going to lose your freaking mind. You're going to be in a lot more suffering than if you just let yourself be, meaning let the body just do its job. And its job is to bring awareness to the lower frequencies so that you can bring your awareness to it, see it, feel it, and allow it to move through you. The body's job is to continue to bring you into higher frequencies so that when you experience the external, you see it as an experience, you see it as a separate consciousness, you see it as a choice. You see that you're the creator being and that you get to move your body around and decide what you want to play in, what you want to believe in. Now, that does not mean that you're not going to experience certain things. You're going to turn on the TV and all of a sudden you're going to see the president talking and it's going to do something to you. What is actually happening is you turn the TV on, you see the president talking, or you see the news going on, or you see some sort of something going on the news, right? Or YouTube or whatever. You are now tapping into that consciousness. That consciousness is literally energetically being filtered into your channel, and your channel is filtering it through the emotional and mental bodies, giving you emotions and thoughts and beliefs. And if you practice just recognizing that that's what's happening, then you're a slip and slide and it just goes right through you. If you don't understand what's happening, gripped, and then you blame yourself and you get upset with yourself and you say there's something wrong with you. I shouldn't be playing in this, right? This is another example of being in the world, but not of the world. You're in it, you're watching, but you're not of it, meaning you're not participating in it physically. Like I'm going to go jump into that and now roll around in that consciousness. Of course, you have every right to. If you are forced, like that nurse or that doctor that asked that question, and you have to walk into that density, and you have to be that light in the grocery store or wherever you may be, it doesn't mean that you're participating in it. It means that you have to stand in it and you got to feel it. So you want to hold as much light as possible, and you want to hold the bigger perspective, and you want to have compassion and empathy for all of the humans that are scared shitless. It's not their fault they're not awake yet. It's not their fault they believe they're going to die from this virus. It's not their fault that they are having all of the human emotions. It's not their fault. They are not awake yet. Let them be. Have compassion and empathy and love for every human that is going through this, however they're going through it. You see somebody coming in and they're anxious and they're nervous and there's nothing really wrong with them, but they're like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I think I have the virus, and nothing's wrong with them. You give them love and empathy. You see people on YouTube or on the news or on any sort of podcast or whatever, and they're really, really angry about what's unraveling. You honor them. You have compassion and empathy for them, right? See it. I am not ignoring it. And I see the bigger picture. And then all of a sudden you'll see yourself getting wrapped up in something, right? And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm in this, right? Sometimes I'll watch a certain someone on TV and I'm watching myself as the ascension professor with my goggles on, my ascension goggles, and I'm watching this person speak on TV. And I'm tapping into the energy of it. I'm tapping into the consciousness, right? So I'm watching that consciousness move into my field, and what's it doing? Interaction of that person talking is moving into my body just by pure experience, right? This is what happens as a human. We can't not have experiences. It's too dense. It's too low of a frequency. You can't take it anymore, right? That's energy. That's energy. Not even turn it on so that you don't have to have the experience of it. But if you were to turn it on and have the experience of it, that consciousness is going to come into your channel. You're choosing to engage, right? And then all of a sudden you become the observer and you start to watch. You watch how you feel, what you're thinking, all of that. You just have compassion. I'm still buffering. What a pain in the ass. Excuse my language. Sometimes it can take a while to like really let this digest. I mean, meaning you have to listen to it and listen to it and listen to it for it to really digest. All right, you guys. Yeah, this is there's a lot of issues with the connection, but it buffered. All right, you guys, I am going to get going. It's over an hour. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for asking all your questions. There's so many more questions that I didn't get to, but I appreciate all of you guys for being here, for showing up. And I will see you next time, wherever that may be. Take care of yourself. Give yourself a big hug. Don't forget who you are. Don't forget who you are in that physical body. Don't forget that higher consciousness that's inside of you right now. I love you guys.